Okay, I think we've waited some time. It's nice to see everybody. Got the familiar names. You guys always come and hang out. Oh, let me get the chat window open. Let's see. Oh, give me just 1 second and then we'll jump in here. Okay. All right, so how many of you guys out there have heard of ambient noise compensation or have jumped in and explored the HM64 and have seen ANC, anything like that? What has been everyone's exposure to this up until this point? Palmer heard about it last week in webinar. Excellent. Palmer, a couple of these graphics might look familiar. Let's see. I have no idea. Okay. Echo cancellation. Close. It can include echo cancellation sometimes. All right, let's see here. And yes, good morning. Good morning. Some people are not in the continental US, so okay. All right, there's some good guesses going on here. Sometimes I have mixed feelings. Sometimes I love when everybody's heard of something, but it's sometimes almost more fun to teach people who have very little exposure to it. So this is going to be a good session. As normal, you guys feel free to turn on your cams. If you want to use your voice, that's cool. Or if you're just comfortable using the chat, that's also excellent. So I will move this over here and we can get started. So in today's session, we're going to be covering ambient noise compensation. In other words, it's like output automation. We're going to go over what an ANC is. I'll give you some examples, places that you would use it, and we'll go over definitions of some of the pieces of ANC while we're programming it. So let's get started. All right. Here's some of those familiar graphics. Palmer. All right, so I like the graphics so much I took them from our webinar last week, which you guys can all see on Facebook or YouTube. Me and my colleague Martine did a webinar on paging, and we also touched on ambient noise compensation as well. That was a great one if you guys want to see some more stuff. So in essence, ambient noise compensation is a way for us to automate the output level of a zone or an area based on who or how loud an area is. So we've got some people hanging out here. We've got our room speakers. And then we insert this ambient mic. The ambient mic is actually listening to how loud this area is going to be. So as people are coming in, and we've got some people cheering on the right-hand side and some people chatting on the left-hand side. As those people come or leave and they start making noise or there's less noise, this ambient mic is basically listening to that at all times. So that makes it possible for us to increase the levels of those room speakers or decrease as people are leaving. And essentially I'll even hop into System Manager while we're doing this. But in essence, it's always listening. And again, the whole idea is that we are able to adjust the overall zone output level as people are coming and going. A couple of places, actually quite a few places, for ANC that would be very appropriate are places like narthexes, which for those that are uninitiated is the lobby-like area, typically in a house of worship. I believe it is mostly Protestant. So narthexes, lobbies are great areas. Cafes are excellent examples of this. Children's areas, I've been helping a gentleman with a children's museum, and he has been using quite a bit of ambient noise compensation, and it was, his name is Charlie Reynolds, and he's an excellent integrator. And he's been using lots of ANC in a children's museum in the northeast part of the United States, where it's very interactive. So kids are coming and going to different sections all of the time, and using ANC to compensate for the fact that there may be lots of kids screaming at each other or nobody in the building at all. Also, welcome zones are an excellent example. Communal areas as a whole, or really in general, any place where large groups of people come and go throughout the day. So think of those kinds of areas. So let's jump into the software itself. Alrighty. Let's see if I can pop this up here. Okay, so you guys should be able to see both the slides and the software. Okay, yes. Yep. All right. Let's move this. Okay, so on every single zone, we have ANC. And for those that do not know, that I'm inside of System Manager right now, which is the software that you could all download right now and play with and poke around and program on Mac or PC. System Manager. It's for our matrix processor, the HM64. So on every single zone, I'm on channels, we have an inputs page, and we also have a zones page. And the zones are essentially output buses. So the way to think of zones are, I could label them by location, like a gym or a cafe, or let's just name zone 5. We'll program while we're talking about this. Let's see, what kind of zone do we want to talk about here? Let's just do a lobby. And we'll make it purple. So we've got a lobby, but it could be, as I've kind of pointed out here, it could be a gym or a cafe or a children's area or a welcoming zone. It could be any number of things. We'll have it be a lobby. And down here, I've got this whole row of ANC. So I could have an ANC, an ambient noise compensation block on every single zone if I would like to, all 64 zones. So I can click on that. It opens up and there's that screenshot we saw. I can toggle it in and out. And let's kind of go through what each of these items mean. So first we have to have an ambient mic. Remember, we have to have a mic in the area for it to listen to, so we actually know how loud people are being in that zone. So let's go make one. So we're in zone 5. Let's go make input 15, because why not? Let's make it purple so it's color coordinated. That's important. And we will do ANC lob, so I know what it is. Okay, so I've got that, and we'll go over here. And first I get to pick the channel of, hey, it needs to know where should I be listening for this. So I can just click on it and I get all of my inputs, and can also listen to a zone if you would like it to listen to a combination of inputs or listen to the level of another zone someplace. Because zones can act like output buses, in a way it kind of lets us, it's almost like subgroups or groups where we can treat it and do group processing on it. So maybe I have many mics in an area, or I would like to use this ANC to listen to the whole campus. I can have all of my ambient mics feeding into a zone, and then use that zone to actually trigger an ANC on a different zone. Okay, so let's go find my ANC. There you are, ANC lob. And next up we've got, so I have that assigned. Now we have my metering point. And this is basically telling it, hey, like at what point do you want me to actually listen to this? Now, post trim is going to be usually a pretty good place to start with. It is the default, but you can also listen to it post delay or post parametric EQ if you would like, depending on if you may possibly be using this ambient mic for something else, or you may want to intentionally keep a lot of the HVAC rumble out. So you may have a lot of parametric on there, or a high pass filter on, for instance, to kind of reject that. Maybe I want to do it post parametric EQ, so my HVAC rumble isn't affecting this. We'll keep it post trim for now. So then we have gain differential. Okay, so what is gain differential? I think we can all agree we know what these words mean separately and maybe what they mean together, but what do they mean in this context? So the gain differential is essentially a way to say, okay, where do you want the control, where we want this zone to sit on top of this ambient mic. So we can go from negative 26 to up 40 decibels. So let's say that I have my ambient mic is coming in at negative 30 decibel units. If I had a gain differential of 10 decibels, actually let's just do, let's do 10. So if I'm coming in at negative 30 decibel units on my ambient level, if I have a gain differential of 10 decibels, that means that my lobby zone or my controlled level is going to float 10 decibels above that. That also means that we can do a negative number. If I wanted my zone to actually float just underneath that, I want it to be 6 decibels or 7 decibels in this case, 7 decibels lower than my ambient mic is. Typically, it's going to be more common that you have it be hovering a little bit above the ambient level, but that all kind of depends on where the ambient mic is sitting. We have to kind of give it more context on the actual installation, where it's sitting and what's going on with it. So 10 decibels is a very excellent starting point, because 10 decibels is, upon survey, what people kind of relate to, or it sounds like a doubling of a signal. It's not actually the doubling of a signal, but for most people, a 10 decibel difference is significant enough and it feels like a doubling. So 10 decibels is usually a good starting point to just say, hey, I want this to be sitting about 10 decibels or so over my ambient metering point. Okay, so we've got that. Then we have gap metering. So gap metering is, again, in essence, exactly what it sounds like, but let's put this into context. So I'll even hop back over here. Let's go to this one. So we utilize, and this whole ANC is using what's called a gap ANC. And instead of using more processing than necessary, we sample the ambient noise in between periods of the program audio, or it might be music, or it could be a page, like paging might going on. Essentially, it listens for times of silence. So let's pretend that we're between songs on a Spotify playlist. This is house music or campus music. When the song ends, I want the ANC to actually be like, oh, the song ended. Let's see how loud it is. And then it samples how loud the ambient noise is and then makes the zone adjustment accordingly. The reason we do it this way is because we don't want to have to filter out its own signal. Not only would that completely destroy our beautiful phase coherence and our very, very low latency inside of the HM64, but this just allows us to make changes as gradually or as quickly as we want based on what's happening between songs. So if I hop back over here, so our gap metering, so I can have a threshold and a time. And if I was reading out the instructions for you, this would essentially mean when the music, I'll just say music, even though it could be paging or any other kind of program audio, when the music drops below 50 decibels, negative 50 decibel units, for 240 milliseconds, I want you to start sampling. I want you to see how loud it is in the zone. I'll say that again. So the gap metering is essentially saying when my music drops below negative 50 decibels, for 240 milliseconds, I want you to begin sampling. When I click this in, this green dot is actually saying I'm actively sampling this because I'm not playing any music through this right now. It's actively sampling. If I had some pink noise running through it or some music, I could adjust this. And if I take it out, of course it's off and it's no longer sampling. And I can adjust this, of course, as necessary. Maybe I want it to wait a little bit longer, or maybe I want it to happen as close to instantaneously as possible. As soon as this song ends, as soon as it drops below, negative 20 decibel units, I want you to make that, I want you to sample it and make the adjustment. And what's kind of fun about this is when it's actively going, you can sit here and watch this fader actually move up and down and change while it's sampling. It's kind of fun. So that's the gap metering. So we have our ambient level metering point, which is saying, pointing the ANC to say, hey, go listen to this input at this point. And I want you to have a differential of about 10 decibels so that my program music is always approximately 10 decibels higher than whatever's happening in the ambient area. And my gap metering is how the sampling is taking it between program material, between songs or between pages, to say, hey, when my program drops below negative 20 decibels for 620 milliseconds, I want you to start sampling and see how loud it actually is and make the adjustment to the zone. So with that being said, we've also got this controlled gain. And this is a way for us to put rails on what's happening. So maybe no matter what, I never want this to go above unity. No matter, I don't care if people are actively screaming into this ambient microphone. I do not want you to force adjust my level for this zone in my lobby above 0 decibels. Don't do it. Or I don't want it to drop below negative 40 no matter what. And so in an example where if we're in a lobby and people are coming and going, if everybody suddenly leaves, I don't necessarily want, the music to be almost, inaudible. I almost said unhearable, which is not a proper word. It's a kind of safe way to adjust this is if you wanted to just have these complete all the way down and all the way up, the minimum all the way to the bottom and all the way to the max, you'll have the largest amount of change. If I put this up here, maybe I want to have it. And you'll actually, you can see as I'm making adjustments on this, my fader up here is changing as well because it's actively sampling it. I am, in fact, my program audio, which is nothing, is in fact below negative 20 decibel units. And so it's saying, hey, I'm sampling this. And so I'm just going to make this level adjustment while you're doing this. So the minimum gain is the very minimum amount that zone will allow. The maximum gain is the maximum value that zone will hang on to. And the rate is how quickly it's adjusting per second. So if I did 30 decibels per second and I drop this, let's see how fast. Oh yeah, and you can see it's going much slower because it's taking 3 times as long to change the sampling. If I did a rate of 3.3 decibels per second, as I'm changing, it is almost, there we go. Haha. You see it's going 3 decibels per second. That's just fun to watch. Maybe I'm, just enjoying myself here. It's like sand in an hourglass kind of thing. So if I'm just, for funsies, I'm making the minimum gain -6, and then I'm going to go way down here. And you can see it's actually trying to adjust it at a rate of 4 decibels per second. It's lowering that level to help adjust for the ambient noise, which in this case is nothing. So, okay. That is, in general, actually, you could go and program this right now. This is quite in depth. Programming ambient noise compensation, our ANC, inside of the HM64. So I haven't looked at the chat, but do we have any questions? Anything you guys would like a little bit more explanation on? Anything at all? Let's see. Palmer says, will you be covering the room microphone type and preferred location? I certainly could talk about that, Palmer, but it would vary so much on what's actually happening, what the room is like. Typically, ambient mics are in the ceiling unless the ceiling is, 40 feet in the air. It's usually, I forget what the standard American ceiling height is. I'm guessing like 10 feet or so. Anywhere from a ceiling mic would be good for anywhere from probably 10 feet to 15 or 20 feet in the air, or up against a wall. There's so many options, Palmer. I'm not, it would depend. And the preferred microphone type, or the kinds of microphone type, they'll be predominantly small diaphragm condenser mics. You wouldn't want anything much other than that. certain you could use a dynamic mic as well. If anybody knows what Planet Fitness is, it is a gym, and they have these exact kind of microphones, these small diaphragm condenser mics, all around the gym. I didn't even put gym down, but that's another excellent example of a place that you may want to put an ANC in this gym. And so it's essentially listening for somebody to drop a barbell or to make obnoxious noises as a way to not make the gym intimidating. And so they could do that or use their ceiling mics essentially to listen to see how many people are working out or how loud it's getting, and are able to adjust the gym music based on people's exerted energy. So as far as specific models, Palmer, I'm not sure I can give one. I hope that kind of gives you an example. You wouldn't want to put a room microphone on the ground necessarily. Ceiling is typically up right up against a wall, probably not a corner. Things like that. Okay, let's see here. Any other questions? Oh, yes. Okay. Let me read this. Tom asks, is the HM64 taking the place of an Allen and Heath mixer and amplifier system? In our church, we use an SQ5 fed from a stage box, and then amplifiers feed the speakers in various rooms. No, it's not taking the place of a mixer. This is really, it's not, it is a mixer, but I wouldn't call it a console. I will say that. It's just shy of a console. There's not effects like reverb on this. That's not its intended purpose. But the HM64 is really a way to, for, in your example, feed the speakers in various other rooms, or perhaps even like recordings or broadcast feed. This can be an excellent way to sort of take some of the processing off of the SQ5 or to augment your audio system, so you've got more ins and more outs, or you're able to basically go around the SQ5 and allow people who don't know how to use a mixer like an SQ5, who don't know how to use that, but still giving them access to the audio. So an HM64 is great for, like, if your pastor wanted to just be able to grab a handheld and use the system, that they could walk up and do that without having to turn on the console and things like that. So it's definitely not replacing it. This is another arm. This is another arm of our ecosystem. Okay. And then Palmer says, I guess I was wondering if there was a mic kit that A&H offers. No, totally up to the user as far as mic choices. Although us making our own mic is quite interesting. Now that you bring that up, I don't think that's been part of the discussion yet, but you know, we did come out with some touch panels for custom control for installs and integrations and things like that, because enough people asked for them. So maybe if enough people ask for mics, maybe we will do that. It would be great. Yeah, I would agree with you, Palmer. It would be great. Okay, Les says, I guess that omnidirectional mics could be a good choice. Absolutely. Omnidirectional mics could be fine, because you're not really looking, when you're using ambient mics in this scenario, when you ambient mics for something like streaming or feeding musicians in ears, you want it to sound like good. But on this particular way, we're really just using it as a sampling point. I don't really mind if it doesn't sound super great, or it's like, oh, I'm clearly getting that wall reflection in this mic. That's okay. I'm really just trying to sample the level and what's going on in the room, so I can adjust my audio feed to match that, or to overcome it, or to compensate for it. So, okay. Any other questions? It could be AHM related, could be ANC related, could not be. Let's look. Oh, okay. Got another one. Let me reread that for a second, Tom. 1 second. Looking back. Tom, I may need you to rephrase that a little bit. I'll read it out loud, because sometimes reading out loud helps me understand. Uh, Looking at the back of the HM64, it is wired into inputs and outputs instead of being a software based device that isn't in the wired path. Are you referring to that there's 12 in and outs on the back and there's more in the software beyond that? I apologize. We'll wait for Tom to write. Or if anybody else can add on
I
to
think
that.
I think I
Oh,
might add on to that.
yeah.
Hi, Samantha.
Hi.
Hey, so I think you're referring to the fact that the inputs are marked there 1 through 12, and the outputs 1 through 12, and those relate to the physical connector number one. It doesn't relate to the fact that there's a 64 by 64 matrix. So input number one can be assigned to any of the 64 matrix inputs in the DSP. They're just physical. Now, by default, when you boot it up, one is into channel one of the matrix. Physical connector number two goes into input number two of the DSP matrix. And there you go. That's perfect. She's showing you right there.
Yep.
So
Yep.
those are the actual local physical connectors on the top, where the DSP path or the signal channel or the path of number one is tied to number physical connector number one. So the GIM is the DSP thing. Those are outputs actually. So yeah, it's the physical
Yes.
connectors can be connected any of the 64 inputs or any of the 64 outputs. Does that kind of answer the question there?
Yeah, hopefully so. And to okay, excellent. Yeah, and to add on what you were saying, Tim. Yeah, the IO on the back is like convenient IO that can sometimes be the exact amount that I need, or in some occasions, in some installs I've seen, they don't use any of the local, and they're all doing remote IO either through Dante or through our S-Link port with the rest of our IO ecosystem. But yes, similar to how our SQ and our Avantis and our DLive, just because we happen to have a physical input or output someplace doesn't mean that it's tied to any particular area. I can go in here and assign anything anywhere if I'd like. And that's truly just the actual like socket assignment, let alone the mix of things that I can do inside between inputs and zones themselves, where I can send inputs to any particular output or lots of outputs or no outputs. I can send it through tie lines. It's not a fixed, it's very flexible. I can kind of throw it or assign it wherever I need to. Okay. Is there a need to EQ this mic? I noticed a PEQ and a GEQ in the lobby signal path. So, possibly. That kind of depends. So, I may, if I wanted to EQ the ambient microphone itself, I could I could go to my inputs, go to my ANC actual input signal path here where I've got all this stuff, and I can do a parametric and actually change, what's going on. So we will do a high pass here. Like let's say my example earlier was HVAC rumble, and so maybe I have this turned on, and then on my ANC, I actually want to take it post parametric. So that's me actually EQing the ambient mic itself. I can use this parametric and or this graphic, which I can toggle into another parametric if I'd like. I can use that to actually tune the zone itself. Either the all of the inputs coming in together and do like a group processing sort of idea, or I'm just doing like speaker tuning, whether through this or through the speaker processing proper with separated bands where I can do 2, 3, or 4 way. So the parametric is there as a way to EQ this output bus. I wouldn't necessarily, that's kind of like, I wouldn't EQ aux 5 if I had a problem with my snare mic. It's that kind of idea.
Hey, actually, I have
Uh,
another thought on that as well. So
yeah,
shockingly,
yes, go for it.
so in
This is
terms of
Tim
the
speaking, by the way,
yeah, hi
if
everybody.
anybody's watching the recording.
In terms of the ambient noise compensation, and I think 99% of 90% of the time, what you're looking to do is the noise in the bar is just getting louder. So if you're going to do background music, you want to be able to raise the background music to be above that, or the page, if you want a page to be able to cut through, you don't want it to be too loud when it's really quiet in the lobby. But if it's really noisy in the lobby, you want the page to be louder. So the so it's really just as she said, it's about sampling the noise level, the sound level in that area. So a high quality microphone is not a requirement. Any microphone, as long as that when has X amount of level, gives you X amount of, it's not calibrated, but it's the same that whatever the level is, because you can calibrate these. It's not about the signal quality that you're using when you're trying to record the audio. This is just knowing that it's about this loud. And there are some times when you might want to EQ it. For instance, maybe the microphone just happens to be located closer to an air conditioning duct. So you might
Mhm.
want to go up there and take some of the real high end out of there so it just doesn't tend to set it off as much. Or maybe there's a low frequency rumble someplace that you want to filter out so it's not giving you erroneous data. But in general, a lower quality microphone is fine as long as you can set it up and calibrate it. And you can simply do this by, putting a sound pressure meter somewhere in the lobby or the room and go, okay, this is the level I care about. And then going to the system and saying, yeah, that's the level I care about. Because not every microphone produces exactly 80 dB with, whatever particular level. So you can EQ them if you have a need to. If there's something you need to filter out, or maybe something you want to be more sensitive to. But in general, if you don't have a particular ambient noise issue like an air conditioning duct or a motor or something that's making special noise, then you wouldn't bother to it. You're just looking to sample how loud it is in that room and
Mhm.
make the AHM64 react to that level, turning up the background page, turning down the background page, or whatever. Does that
Mhm.
make sense? And did I say it right, Samantha?
Yeah, nope, you're
Yep.
perfect, spot
Yeah.
on. And like, oh, that was exactly what I was talking about earlier to Palmer's question about covering the kind of room microphone type or a preferred location. We don't, and just as Tim just kind of reiterated, it doesn't like, we're not looking to record this. It's not an ambient mic that I might use in a musician's in ears or for my broadcast feed. That needs to sound a certain way and act a certain way for it to be usable and good. This is truly, you know, kind of like an SPL microphone. We're really just trying to figure out how loud is this area, but we can compensate again for things like HVAC noise, or I love the idea that Tim brought up of maybe being particularly sensitive to something. Like if it's a cry room and you wanted to be able to auto adjust that, maybe make it more sensitive to babies' cries, which are also tend to be in the region where we humans are most sensitive, which is about 5K or so. 2 to 5K, I think, is where we're most sensitive. And having it kind of mimic that and look for it as well. So perfect. Thank you very much, Tim. Okay. Tom says these things are very versatile. It's hard to get your head wrapped around it. It is extremely versatile. You have to sort of get into the idea of nothing has to necessarily be anything. We really tried to make it so flexible that you're able to achieve whatever you need, but we get to like lock in certain things like our very, very ultra low latency, 0.7 milliseconds, and to have phase coherency, all running at 96K. So we lock in a couple of these little factors so that we can have quality audio all of the time. And then we make everything else so flexible that you almost forget that some things function this way or function this way in another area. Like the whole goal is to really give the power to the programmers. And when I'm helping people design things, we'll work backwards. Like we have to talk about, okay, where do you guys want to end up? Like how do people want to interact with this? How is this supposed to function? And then we move backwards from there into the programming, because there's multiple ways to do any one thing, and it's all about how people are able to interact with it. Okay, Les says, what would you use the insert feature for the ambient mic? What would you use the insert feature for the ambient mic? There we go. I think I said that more correctly, Les. Um, no, typically the insert might be, well, how inserts are ever used is a way to send it out someplace. So I'll just go to my input side because I actually have two insert points on here. Uh, on the latest firmware 1.1, which you guys should all have, I can actually run my acoustic echo cancellations on my inserts, or more traditionally, I can have my send and my return either being sent out from the local outputs through my S-Link, my intelligent port to on the Allen and Heath ecosystem, or over the I/O ports through our Waves card or our Dante card. I can send those out as well. The inserts wise in this case, specifically for ambient mics, it's probably unnecessary, and you wouldn't put the ambient mic on the insert. It wouldn't be necessary because we have this ambient level metering point where we're telling the ANC, go look at this. I don't have to insert it on the channel. And in addition, inserting it on the channel would mean that that ambient mic is coming out of the lobby speakers, and we probably don't want that.
Yeah, actually, I got another point on that one. It's funny you should ask that because there you'll see in a lot of our products, especially software-driven stuff, sometimes you'll look at a feature and they go, "Why would you ever do that?" And honestly, I can't really think of why you would need an insert point, what you really need it for on an ambient noise compensating microphone.
Yeah.
But what'll happen with our engineering development team, the workflow that's there is sort of exactly the same kind of workflow that works for other input structures, standard input structures. So it's like it's there already, and the engineers look at, well, I guess we should take it. I don't know why you would do that. Let's take it out of there. And they go, no, maybe somebody has a need for it. There might be a reason. And what we've learned over 40 years, how was nice, 45 years of doing this, is that our customers like you actually come up with really amazing things. A lot of our product is just designed by customer input. We have several user forums where people talk about it, and that's where we get all of our best ideas. So what will happen is we'll put a feature in there, and all of us sales guys kind of go, why would you ever do that? And then over a period of a year or so, we'll get these really amazing things that somebody said, well, I use the insert point on the ambient noise compensation input to do X, Y, Z. And we go, wow, that's brilliant. We never thought of it. So sometimes we'll kind of leave things in there because we're not sure why, but we think, well, maybe somebody will have a use for it. If we think it clutters things up and causes more issues, then we'll take it out. But what happens is the users like you really end up doing some pretty amazing things, and we learn a lot from that. So you'll see some things in different software, whether it's DLive or Advantage SQ, or especially in this one where you go, why? And Samantha, I can't think of a single application where we really need to do it for this, but somebody else may come up with something to go, thank God you had that, because that really saved the day here. So sorry for
Yeah.
the goofy answer, but it is because customers come up with really amazing things, and we learn a lot from customers and how they implement the products.
Yeah, it's all for the sake of like keeping it open and flexible so that other people can get exactly what they need done. And while you were talking, I actually thought of like a scenario that might work. So in an ambient mic, conversation, maybe I want to send it someplace that's third party. So maybe I've got this ambient mic, and I also want to use it someplace else. Like let's just imagine outside of the HM system altogether. Maybe I send it out over my Dante card, and yep, that's fine. I want to send it out to my over my Dante card for something else to use this mic completely out of the Allen Heath ecosystem, or even within the Allen Heath ecosystem. I just want to send it out. So maybe I'm kind of using an insert almost as like I could use a direct out, or if I could use the insert if I didn't want to use the direct out. That may be a scenario, but again, there's always multiple ways to do any one thing. So if I didn't want to use direct out, maybe I wanted to use my send on my insert. Okay. Alrighty. Next one says, is ANC available as just an app to use with your system as opposed to having the HM64 chassis? So System Manager is the interface for which we program and use the HM64. So the So the app and the system are one and the same. I just happen to be in offline mode right now. So it's not an app that I can just kind of take and drop someplace. This is inside of the HM64, and this is how I'm interfacing with it. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Anything you guys are curious about? You guys have had some great questions today. This is going to be quite the Q&A follow-up email. So it'll be good. Okay. All right. I think that's the last one. Okay. All right. I will hang out. Consider this office hours now. Ask questions, ANC, AHM64 related or otherwise. I will hang out here. But for everybody else, thank you for coming, and I hope you have an excellent rest of your Wednesday.